The morning sun cast long shadows across the playground of Riverside Elementary School when the ships appeared. They came without warning, massive vessels that blotted out the sky with their dark hulls gleaming like polished obsidian. Children stopped mid-swing, their laughter dying in their throats as the alien craft descended with impossible silence. Sarah Martinez had been teaching for 12 years, but nothing could have prepared her for the moment when the classroom windows exploded inward. Strange beings in sleek armor poured through the opening, their movements too fluid, too precise to be human. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces hidden behind reflective visors that showed only distorted reflections of terrified children. The Zelathans had been watching Earth for months, studying human behavior through their advanced surveillance systems. They had identified what they believed to be the planet's most valuable resource: young minds, untainted by the rigid thinking patterns that developed in adult humans. These children, they reasoned, could be molded into perfect soldiers for their expanding galactic empire. Commander Vex 9 led the operation personally, his 3 hearts beating in synchronized rhythm as he surveyed the cowering youngsters. Through his translator device, he spoke in mechanical tones that sent chills down every spine in the room. The children would serve the Zelathan war machine, he announced. They would be trained from this day forward to become warriors in conflicts spanning countless star systems. 70 children vanished that day from schools across the American Midwest. The abductions happened simultaneously, coordinated with military precision that left local authorities helpless. Security cameras captured only brief glimpses of the attackers before electromagnetic pulses wiped the footage clean. Parents arrived to find empty classrooms, scattered backpacks, and the lingering scent of ozone that marked the aliens' advanced technology. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the impossible story. Social media exploded with shaky cell phone videos of the massive ships departing Earth's atmosphere, their engines leaving trails of ionized particles that painted aurora-like patterns across the daylight sky. The president addressed the nation from the Oval Office, his face grave as he promised that America would not rest until every child was brought home safely. But as the ships disappeared beyond the moon's orbit, carrying their precious cargo toward distant stars, one thing became abundantly clear. This was no longer a problem that conventional military forces could handle. The game had changed forever, and Earth needed warriors who could fight among the stars themselves. Deep within the Pentagon, emergency meetings convened as generals and admirals struggled to comprehend the new reality. Humanity's children were prisoners somewhere in the vast darkness of space, and their captors possessed technology that made Earth's most advanced weapons seem like Stone Age tools. Traditional rescue operations were impossible when the enemy could travel faster than light and possessed weapons that could level entire cities. The Zelathans had made one critical error in their calculations. However, they had studied human behavior, observed human reactions, and analyzed human military capabilities through their distant sensors. But they had never truly understood the lengths to which humans would go to protect their young. They had never witnessed the fury that could drive a parent to impossible acts of heroism, or the determination that could transform ordinary people into unstoppable forces. As news of the kidnapping spread across the globe, something awakened in the collective human spirit. It was primal, ancient, and utterly relentless. From small towns to major cities, from corporate boardrooms to military barracks, the same message echoed: bring our children home. The aliens had touched something sacred, something that transcended national boundaries and political differences. In the hours following the abductions, amateur radio operators picked up strange transmissions from deep space. The signals were faint, barely detectable above the cosmic background radiation, but they were unmistakably artificial. Codebreakers worked feverishly to decipher the alien communications, hoping to find some clue about the children's destination or the kidnappers' intentions. Meanwhile, observatories around the world tracked the departure trajectory of the alien vessels, plotting their course through the solar system and beyond. The ships had accelerated to impossible speeds, bending the laws of physics in ways that human science could barely comprehend. But even as they disappeared into the interstellar void, their electromagnetic signatures left traces that Earth's most sensitive instruments could follow. The countdown had begun. Somewhere among the stars, 70 innocent children were being carried away from everything they had ever known, toward a fate that their captors believed would strip away their humanity forever. But the Zelathans had underestimated their prey in the most fundamental way possible. They had taken Earth's children, and now they would learn what it truly meant to face the wrath of humanity unleashed. 3 days after the abductions, Dr. Elena Vasquez made a discovery that would change everything. Working in her laboratory at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, she had been analyzing the electromagnetic residue left by the alien ships when her instruments detected something impossible. Hidden beneath layers of interference and cosmic noise was a signal that shouldn't exist, a human heartbeat, transmitted across interstellar distances. The breakthrough came at 3:17 a.m., when Elena's quantum communication array picked up what appeared to be biological data. At first, she thought it was equipment malfunction. The reading suggested that somehow, impossibly, the alien ships were transmitting real-time biometric information from their captives back to Earth. The technology required was so advanced that it bordered on magic, yet the evidence was undeniable. Within 6 hours, Elena's findings had reached the highest levels of government. The president convened an emergency session of the National Security Council, where scientists, military leaders, and intelligence officials gathered around a conference table that had witnessed countless crises, but never one quite like this. The holographic display showed Elena's data in stark detail. 70 distinct human biosignatures, alive and apparently unharmed, but traveling at speeds that would carry them to the edge of known space. General Patricia Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, studied the readouts with growing amazement. The alien technology wasn't just advanced, it was practically incomprehensible. The ships appeared to be using some form of quantum entanglement to maintain communication links across vast distances, allowing them to monitor their prisoners in real time, while simultaneously transmitting that data back to Earth. Why they would do such a thing remained a mystery. Dr. Marcus Webb, the nation's leading expert on theoretical physics, offered a disturbing possibility. Perhaps the aliens weren't just kidnapping the children for their military potential. Maybe they were conducting some kind of experiment, using the quantum communication link to study human responses to extreme stress and isolation. The thought that Earth's children might be serving as laboratory subjects sent cold fury through everyone present. As the hours passed, more details emerged from the intercepted transmissions. The children were being held in some kind of containment facility aboard the lead ship. Their vital signs indicated extreme stress, but also something else: defiance. Even in their terror, the young prisoners were resisting their captors in small but measurable ways. Heart rates that spiked during confrontations, brain activity that suggested active planning and coordination among the group. 8-year-old Tommy Chen had become an unlikely leader among the captives. The quantum sensors detected his elevated neural activity whenever the aliens attempted to separate the children or subject them to their strange tests. Somehow, despite the language barrier and the aliens' advanced psychology techniques, Tommy was organizing resistance efforts that kept the group's morale from completely collapsing. The intelligence breakthrough came when cryptographers realized that the alien transmissions contained more than just biological data. Embedded within the quantum stream were fragments of the ship's navigational systems, automatically transmitted as part of their standard communication protocols. The aliens had never imagined that a primitive species like humanity could intercept and decode their signals, so they hadn't bothered to encrypt the non-essential data. Working around the clock, teams of mathematicians and computer scientists began piecing together the aliens' destination. The ship was heading toward a star system approximately 47 light-years from Earth, in a region of space that human astronomers had cataloged but never seriously studied. Spectral analysis suggested at least 6 planets orbiting a yellow star slightly larger than Earth's sun, with conditions that might support various forms of life. More disturbing was the discovery that this wasn't the first such expedition. Analysis of the ship's data logs revealed references to previous operations involving other species from across the galaxy. The Zelathans weren't random kidnappers. They were systematic collectors of young minds from developing civilizations. Earth was just their latest hunting ground in a campaign that had been ongoing for centuries. The realization that humanity was dealing with experienced predators who had perfected their techniques on countless other worlds sent shockwaves through the scientific community. How many other species had lost their children to these cosmic raiders? How many civilizations had been crippled by having their next generation stolen away before they could reach technological maturity? But the quantum communication link also provided an unexpected advantage. If Earth scientists could decode the aliens' transmissions, they could also potentially send signals back along the same channel. The physics were incredibly complex, requiring precise calibration of quantum field generators that existed only in the most advanced laboratories. But theoretical calculations suggested it might be possible to establish two-way communication with the kidnapped children. Dr. Vasquez worked feverishly to modify her equipment, racing against time as the alien ships traveled farther from Earth with each passing hour. The quantum entanglement effect wouldn't last forever. Eventually, the increasing distance would cause the link to degrade beyond recovery. Humanity had perhaps days, maybe weeks at most, before their only connection to the children would be lost forever. As word of the breakthrough spread through classified channels, military planners began developing scenarios that had never been contemplated before. If they could communicate with the children, they might be able to coordinate a rescue operation. But that would require capabilities that Earth simply didn't possess. Faster-than-light travel, weapons that could match alien technology, and soldiers trained to fight in the vacuum of space itself. The challenge seemed impossible, but something was stirring in the depths of the American military establishment. In hidden facilities scattered across the country, projects that had been theoretical for decades were suddenly receiving unlimited funding and priority status. Humanity's children were out there among the stars, and Earth was preparing to follow them into the darkness. Colonel Jake Morrison received the call at 500 hours, just as he was finishing his morning run around the perimeter of Area 51. The voice on the secure line belonged to someone so high up the chain of command that even Morrison, with his top-secret clearances, had never spoken to them directly. The message was brief: report to Hangar 18 immediately, and bring nothing except the clothes on his back. Morrison had spent 15 years in the most classified corners of the American military. He'd led special operations in places that didn't exist on any official map, using weapons that wouldn't be acknowledged for another decade. But nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for what awaited him in the depths of the Nevada facility. Hangar 18 contained technology that seemed pulled from science fiction movies. Sleek vehicles that hovered silently above the concrete floor, weapons that fired coherent energy beams instead of bullets, and most impossibly of all, a massive ring-shaped device that hummed with barely contained power. The Stargate, as his briefer called it, represented 30 years of reverse-engineered alien technology, recovered from crashes and encounters that the public would never know about. The briefing officer was a thin man in a black suit who introduced himself only as Mr. Smith. He explained that Morrison had been selected to lead a 12-person team on humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. The children taken by the Zelathans were being held on a fortress world in the Kepler 442 system, and Earth's most advanced technology would be needed to bring them home safely. Morrison's team members arrived throughout the morning, each one pulled from the most elite units in the American military. There was Captain Maria Santos, a former Navy SEAL who had pioneered zero-gravity combat techniques. Master Sergeant David Kim brought expertise in electronic warfare that bordered on the supernatural. Technical Sergeant Lisa Walsh had spent 3 years studying captured alien artifacts, learning to interface human nervous systems with extraterrestrial computer networks. The team's equipment defied every law of physics that Morrison thought he understood. Their armor was constructed from metamaterials that could deflect energy weapons while remaining lighter than traditional Kevlar. The suits included life support systems capable of operating in space for weeks, powered by compact fusion reactors that generated more energy than most small cities consumed. Their primary weapons were particle beam rifles that could adjust their output from non-lethal stunning charges to blasts capable of vaporizing reinforced steel. Secondary armament included plasma grenades, quantum disruptors, and something called a reality anchor that could supposedly protect against alien mental manipulation techniques. Each soldier carried enough firepower to level a city block, yet moved with the silent grace of traditional special forces operators. The mission parameters were unlike anything in military history. The team would travel through the Stargate to a staging area in the Proxima Centauri system, where an advanced reconnaissance probe had established a forward operating base. From there, they would use captured alien vessels to approach the Zealothan fortress world, infiltrate the facility holding the children, and extract all 70 hostages without triggering a galactic war. Dr. Sarah Chen, the mission's scientific advisor, explained the Zealothan social structure while the team studied holographic displays of their target. The aliens operated under a strict caste system that valued military prowess above all else. Their society had been shaped by millennia of conquest, turning them into nearly perfect warriors but leaving them psychologically incapable of understanding concepts like mercy or compassion. The fortress world itself was a marvel of military engineering. Massive defensive platforms orbited the planet, capable of detecting approaching ships from light years away. The surface bristled with weapon emplacements that could shatter mountains with single volleys. The facility holding the children was buried 3 miles underground, accessible only through heavily guarded transport tubes that were monitored by artificial intelligence systems more advanced than anything Earth had ever produced. Morrison studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. His team was incredibly well equipped by human standards, but they would be facing an enemy that had been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years. The Zealothans had conquered dozens of star systems, enslaved entire species, and built an empire that spanned half the galaxy. 12 human soldiers, no matter how well trained, seemed hopelessly outnumbered. But humanity had advantages that the aliens couldn't anticipate. Human tactical thinking was chaotic and unpredictable, compared to the rigid patterns that governed Zealothan military doctrine. Where aliens relied on overwhelming firepower and established protocols, humans excelled at improvisation and creative problem-solving. Morrison's team had been selected not just for their combat skills, but for their ability to think outside the box when conventional approaches failed. The quantum communication link with the kidnapped children had been strengthening over the past week. Dr. Vasquez had successfully established two-way contact, allowing the rescue team to coordinate with Tommy Chen and the other young leaders among the prisoners. The children had been gathering intelligence about their captors' routines, mapping the layout of their prison, and preparing for the moment when help would arrive. Training began immediately in simulated environments that recreated the conditions they would face on the fortress world. The team practiced combat in low gravity, learned to operate in atmosphere compositions that would be toxic to unprotected humans, and mastered the use of alien technology that they might need to commandeer during the mission. Every scenario ended the same way: get the children out alive regardless of the cost. As the final preparations neared completion, Morrison gathered his team for one last briefing. They were about to embark on a journey that would carry them farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. They would face enemies armed with weapons that could crack planets, protected by defenses that had never been breached in recorded history. The odds of success were almost impossible to calculate, and the chances of survival seemed even worse. Yet as Morrison looked into the eyes of his soldiers, he saw something that gave him hope. These weren't just warriors. They were parents, siblings, and citizens who understood what was at stake. 70 children were depending on them, and failure wasn't an option. The alien empire had made the mistake of thinking that humans would accept the loss of their young. Now they were about to learn why that assumption would cost them everything. The Stargate activated with a sound like thunder rolling through cathedral halls. Energy cascaded around the massive ring in brilliant blue spirals, creating a shimmering portal that opened onto impossibilities. Through the gateway, Morrison could see alien stars burning in unfamiliar configurations, casting their light across a universe that humanity was just beginning to understand. Stepping through the portal felt like walking into liquid lightning. Every nerve in Morrison's body fired simultaneously as the Stargate's transport beam disassembled him at the quantum level and reconstructed him 43 light-years from Earth. The sensation lasted only microseconds, but the implications were staggering. Humanity had just achieved what had seemed impossible mere weeks ago: instantaneous travel across interstellar distances. The staging area on the far side was a testament to human ingenuity and determination. In just 10 days, automated construction drones had carved out a fully operational military base from the rocky surface of an airless moon orbiting Proxima Centauri. Fusion reactors provided unlimited power, while atmospheric processors created breathable air within the sealed habitat modules. It was humanity's first foothold among the stars, built with technology that had been science fiction until the aliens forced Earth to accelerate its development schedule by centuries. Captain Santos led the team through equipment checks while Morrison studied the latest intelligence reports. The quantum communication link with the kidnapped children had provided detailed information about the Zealothan fortress world. Tommy Chen had proven remarkably resourceful, using his tablet computer to secretly map the facility's layout during the supervised recreation periods that their captors provided. The prison complex was larger than initial estimates had suggested. Nearly 1,000 young beings from dozens of different species were held in separate wings, organized by their captors according to some alien classification system that prioritized military potential. The human children were considered especially valuable because of their species' unusual combination of creativity and aggression, traits that the Zealothans believed would make them ideal soldiers once properly conditioned. Master Sergeant Kim had spent the journey analyzing captured Zealothan technology, learning to interface with their computer systems through neural implants that translated human thoughts into alien code. The process was dangerous, potentially causing permanent brain damage if the connection was maintained too long, but it offered the team's only hope of accessing the fortress's security networks without triggering massive alarm systems. Their transport was a captured Zealothan scout vessel that had been modified with human weapons and navigation systems. The ship looked like a predatory insect, all curved angles and gleaming surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflecting it. Its engines used some form of space-folding technology that allowed near-instantaneous travel between star systems, making it possible to reach the fortress world in less than 6 hours. Dr. Walsh monitored the ship's alien systems while Morrison piloted using controls that had been designed for hands with too many joints and fingers that bent in impossible directions. The interface was deeply unsettling, requiring the user to think in mathematical concepts that human brains weren't naturally equipped to process. But humanity's gift for adaptation was allowing the team to master tools that had taken the Zealothans millennia to develop. As they traveled through the twisted space between dimensions, Technical Sergeant Rodriguez maintained contact with the children through the quantum communication array. The young prisoners had been organizing themselves according to Tommy's leadership, creating small acts of resistance that disrupted their captors' conditioning programs. 8-year-old Sarah Kim had figured out how to jam the translation devices during educational sessions, while 10-year-old Marcus Williams had been teaching the other children to communicate through a code based on eye movements that the aliens couldn't interpret. The fortress world appeared in their view screen like a metallic cancer, growing across the surface of what had once been a garden planet. Massive industrial complexes stretched to the horizon, connected by transport tubes that carried resources and prisoners between facilities. The orbital defense platforms were works of art in their deadly perfection, graceful structures that could obliterate entire fleets with weapons that turned matter into pure energy. Morrison's team used the scout ship's stealth systems to approach undetected, following a route that Tommy had identified during his careful observation of guard rotations. The children had noticed that supply convoys arrived at regular intervals, through a specific corridor that was less heavily monitored than the main approaches. By timing their arrival to coincide with a scheduled delivery, the rescue team could slip past the outer defenses without triggering the automated warning systems. The infiltration began at 0347 local time, when the fortress's night cycle reduced patrol activity to minimum levels. Morrison led his team through maintenance tunnels that connected the various prison complexes, moving silently through spaces barely large enough for human forms. The Zealothan architecture was designed for beings larger than humans, making navigation difficult, but providing unexpected advantages when stealth was required. Captain Santos used her zero-gravity training to traverse a section of tunnel that had been damaged by some past accident, moving like a ghost through chambers filled with poisonous gases that would have killed unprotected humans instantly. Her suit's life support systems filtered the toxic atmosphere, while magnetic boots allowed her to walk on surfaces where gravity pulled in directions that defied human understanding. The team's first major obstacle was a security checkpoint that monitored all movement between the upper and lower levels of the complex. Master Sergeant Kim connected his neural interface to the alien computer system, feeling his consciousness merge temporarily with artificial intelligence networks that processed information at speeds beyond human comprehension. The sensation was like drowning in an ocean of pure mathematics, but he managed to create a brief window in the security grid that allowed his teammates to pass undetected. As they descended toward the human prison section, Morrison could hear the quantum communicator receiving updates from Tommy Chen. The children were ready for extraction, having spent days preparing improvised weapons and gathering information about guard movements. Their young minds had proven remarkably adaptable to the challenges of captivity, finding ways to maintain hope and unity despite the aliens' sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques. But the team's approach hadn't gone completely unnoticed. Deep within the fortress's central command center, automated systems were beginning to detect anomalies in the facility's normal operations. Soon, very soon, the aliens would realize that something was wrong. The rescue mission had become a race against time, with 70 young lives hanging in the balance and an entire galactic empire preparing to respond with overwhelming force. The human prison section lay 3 miles beneath the fortress world's surface, accessible through a single transport shaft that descended through layers of reinforced armor plating designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Morrison's team reached the entrance at precisely 0400 hours, when the alien guards completed their shift change and attention was momentarily diverted from security monitors. Tommy Chen's voice crackled through the quantum communicator, providing real-time updates on the guards' positions within the prison complex. The 8-year-old had spent weeks memorizing his captors' routines, noting which aliens were more alert during different periods and identifying the brief windows when sections of the facility were left unmonitored. His intelligence gathering had been so thorough that Morrison's tactical computers couldn't have done better. Captain Santos descended the transport shaft using magnetic clamps, moving silently along the walls while scanner sweeps passed harmlessly through the spaces where guards expected to find intruders. The Zelathans had designed their security systems to detect large-scale assault forces, never imagining that a handful of determined humans could penetrate their defenses through careful planning and individual skill. The prison level was a maze of corridors lined with transparent aluminum cells, each one containing young beings from across the galaxy. Morrison felt his anger growing as he saw the conditions in which the children were being held. The cells were barely large enough for their occupants to lie down, with minimal life support and no privacy from the constant surveillance systems that monitored every movement and conversation. Technical Sergeant Walsh interfaced with the prison's computer network, her consciousness diving deep into alien software architectures that thought in concepts humans barely understood. The Zelathans organized information in hierarchical patterns based on military rank and conquest achievements, making their systems incredibly efficient, but also predictably rigid. Walsh found the security protocols governing the human section and began the delicate process of overriding them without triggering alarms. The first children Morrison saw were huddled together in a corner cell, their faces bearing the haunted expressions of young minds pushed beyond their limits. But as they recognized the human soldiers approaching their prison, something magical happened. Hope returned to eyes that had been empty for weeks, and voices that had been silenced by despair began whispering names and messages for parents they feared they might never see again. Master Sergeant. Kim worked frantically to unlock the cell doors while maintaining the illusion that all systems were operating normally. Each lock required a different access code, and the alien computer insisted on biometric verification from authorized personnel before releasing prisoners. Kim had to fool security systems that could detect lies at the quantum level, making his neural interface burn with pain as he forced his human brain to think like a Zelithan commander. Tommy Chen stood at the front of his cell when Morrison reached it, his small frame radiating the kind of leadership that couldn't be taught in any military academy. The boy had kept his fellow prisoners organized and hopeful through weeks of psychological manipulation designed to break their spirits. He saluted Morrison with perfect military precision, then quietly asked if his team was ready to help get everyone home safely. The extraction began with surgical precision, each child being equipped with emergency life support gear that would protect them during the journey to the surface. The suits were designed for adult users, making them bulky and awkward on small frames, but the children adapted quickly with the resilience that had kept them alive in captivity. Morrison's team moved through the prison complex like ghosts, gathering their charges while avoiding detection by the increasingly sophisticated security systems. But the rescue operation hit a snag when they reached Sarah Kim's cell. The 10-year-old girl had been selected for special conditioning programs that left her weak and disoriented, barely able to walk without assistance. Captain Santos carried the child while continuing to monitor approach routes, her enhanced strength allowing her to move swiftly despite the additional burden. Every step took them closer to freedom, but also increased the chances of discovery by roving patrol units. The breakthrough moment came when Marcus Williams pointed out a maintenance hatch that led directly to the facility's main power distribution center. The boy had noticed during his captivity that the guards never checked this particular area, assuming it was too dangerous for prisoners to access. Morrison realized that they could use the power conduits as an alternate escape route, bypassing the heavily monitored transport shaft entirely. Dr. Walsh led the way through the electrical systems, her suit's insulation protecting her from energy discharges that would have vaporized unprotected humans. Behind her, 70 children followed in single file, moving through spaces filled with enough power to light entire cities. The alien technology was beautiful in its efficiency, but it had never been designed to accommodate human-sized intruders crawling through its most vulnerable components. The first alarm sounded just as the last child entered the power conduit system. Morrison's heart sank as emergency lights began flashing throughout the complex, and the voice of Commander Vex 9 echoed through speakers demanding an immediate security sweep of all prisoner areas. The Zealothans had finally realized that something was wrong, and their response would be swift and merciless. Racing through the power distribution maze, the rescue team reached a junction that led to the surface through a service tunnel used by automated maintenance drones. But the route was guarded by security barriers that required simultaneous activation from multiple control points, and the timing had to be perfect to avoid triggering defensive weapon systems that would seal the tunnel permanently. Morrison split his team into 3 groups, each one responsible for reaching a different control station while protecting their assigned children. The coordination required split-second timing and absolute trust in teammates operating beyond visual range. As Zealothan security forces poured into the prison level below them, the Americans prepared for the most challenging phase of their mission. Tommy Chen stayed close to Morrison, serving as a communications relay between the scattered groups of children and maintaining morale through whispered words of encouragement. The boy's courage was infectious, spreading through the group and transforming frightened prisoners into determined survivors ready to fight for their freedom. The tunnel barriers opened simultaneously as all 3 teams activated their control stations, creating a brief window of opportunity that would last only minutes before the fortress's automated systems detected the security breach. 71 human voices began moving toward the surface, toward hope, toward home, while behind them the greatest military force in galactic history mobilized to stop them. The service tunnel stretched for 2 miles through solid rock, illuminated only by the pale emergency lighting that activated when the maintenance drones detected unauthorized movement. Morrison led the procession of children and soldiers through passages barely wide enough for adult humans, while behind them the thunderous sound of Zealothan response teams echoed through the fortress complex. Commander Vex 9 had mobilized every available unit on the fortress world, turning the facility into a hunting ground where thousands of alien soldiers searched for the escaped prisoners. The Zealothan military operated with mechanical efficiency, sealing exit points and deploying sensor networks that could detect human heartbeats through solid metal. But they had never faced opponents who understood that the greatest strength sometimes came from the smallest packages. Tommy Chen had become Morrison's unofficial second-in-command, relaying information between the scattered groups of children and helping to maintain the precise timing required for their escape plan. The 8-year-old boy moved through the tunnel with the confidence of a seasoned soldier, checking on younger children and distributing the emergency rations that would sustain them during the journey to the surface. Technical Sergeant Rodriguez monitored alien communications through her captured equipment, providing real-time updates on the enemy's search patterns. The Zealothans were systematically checking every possible escape route, but their rigid tactical thinking was working against them. They expected the humans to move in predictable military formations, never imagining that children could be trained to operate with the flexibility of special forces units. Captain Santos had taken responsibility for the youngest members of the group, carrying a 5-year-old girl named Amy, while simultaneously maintaining security for their rearguard position. The captain's enhanced strength made the burden manageable, but every step took them through increasingly dangerous territory as automated defense systems activated throughout the fortress complex. The first major obstacle appeared when they reached a junction where the service tunnel intersected with the fortress's main transportation network. Massive cargo containers moved through the intersection on magnetic rails, each one large enough to crush the entire rescue party if the timing was miscalculated. Master Sergeant Kim studied the movement patterns while calculating the precise moment when they could cross safely. 8-year-old Sarah Martinez had been observing the cargo system during her captivity, noting that the containers followed predictable schedules based on the fortress's industrial production cycles. Her information proved crucial when Kim's calculations showed that they had exactly 17 seconds to move 73 people across a gap that normally required automated machinery. To navigate safely, the crossing became a test of trust and coordination that bound the group together in ways that no training exercise could replicate. Children who had never met before their abduction worked together with perfect synchronization, moving through spaces where a single mistake would have meant instant death. Morrison felt pride swelling in his chest as he watched these young survivors demonstrate the same courage and determination that defined America's finest warriors. But their progress hadn't gone unnoticed by the fortress's most sophisticated security systems. Deep within the facility's central computer core, artificial intelligence networks were analyzing the escape pattern and predicting the human's most likely destination. The AI had access to tactical databases spanning millions of years of Zealothan military history, yet it struggled to understand the chaotic and unpredictable nature of human problem-solving. Dr. Walsh received an urgent transmission from the quantum communicator, just as they reached the halfway point of their tunnel journey. The message came from Dr. Vasquez back on Earth, warning that the Zealothans were preparing to activate a facility-wide lockdown that would seal every entrance and exit with blast doors designed to withstand nuclear weapons. The rescue team had perhaps 20 minutes before the fortress became an impregnable prison. Morrison made the decision to split the group again, sending Captain Santos ahead with the youngest children, while he remained with the older prisoners who could move more quickly. The separation was heartbreaking, but tactical necessity demanded that they maximize their chances of getting at least some of the hostages to safety. Every child who reached freedom would represent a victory against an empire that had never experienced defeat. The tunnel began sloping upward as they approached the surface levels, but the incline was steep enough to challenge even the enhanced soldiers in their powered armor. Morrison watched 10-year-old Marcus Williams helping a younger boy climb a particularly difficult section, demonstrating the kind of selfless leadership that made humans such formidable opponents when properly motivated. Master Sergeant Kim detected the first signs of surface activity when his sensors picked up energy signatures from the fortress's external defense platforms. The Zealothans were activating weapon systems that could vaporize their stolen scout ship if they managed to reach it, but they were also creating electromagnetic interference that would disrupt their own communications and sensor networks. Tommy Chen suggested using the storm as cover for their final approach to the extraction point, reasoning that the aliens would have difficulty tracking individual targets amid the energy chaos created by their own weapons. The boys' tactical thinking was sophisticated enough to impress Morrison's veteran soldiers, proof that human adaptability could emerge at any age when survival was at stake. The tunnel exit was concealed beneath a maintenance shed that serviced the fortress's atmospheric processing systems. Captain Santos had reached the surface first with her group of younger children, establishing a security perimeter while monitoring approaching Zealothan patrol units. Her report indicated that they had, perhaps 5 minutes before enemy forces would surround the extraction site, Morrison's group emerged into the alien night just as the first blast. Doors began sealing throughout the fortress complex. Behind them, 3 miles of tunnels were being systematically locked down by security systems that had never failed in the fortress's 1,000-year history. But ahead lay their captured scout ship, its engines already warming for immediate departure. The final sprint to freedom required crossing open ground while Zealothan aircraft circled overhead, their searchlights carving through the darkness in search of the escaped prisoners. 70 children ran across that deadly space with their protectors, racing toward a vessel that represented their only hope of seeing home again. And in that moment, As they reached for the stars that would carry them back to Earth, Morrison realized that they had accomplished something truly impossible. They had struck directly at the heart of the Galactic Empire and emerged victorious, proving that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or firepower, but the unbreakable determination to protect their young. The stolen Zealothan scout ship erupted from the fortress world's surface, just as the final blast doors sealed the underground complex. Behind them, Commander Vex 9 watched in stunned disbelief as his impregnable prison released its most valuable captives through a route that shouldn't have been possible to navigate. For the first time in his military career, the alien commander found himself trying to explain failure to superiors, who had never experienced defeat. Morrison guided the ship through the orbital defense grid, using flight patterns that Tommy Chen had memorized during their arrival weeks earlier. The 8-year-old had noticed that supply vessels followed specific approach corridors, timed to avoid the automated weapon systems, and his observations now provided the key to escaping the fortress world's deadly embrace. The boy's intelligence gathering had been so thorough that even Morrison's advanced tactical computers couldn't improve on his analysis. Captain Santos worked frantically to establish communications with the staging base at Proxima Centauri. Knowing that Earth was waiting for confirmation that the rescue mission had succeeded, her message burst across 43 light-years in seconds, carrying news that would transform humanity's understanding of what was possible when survival demanded the impossible. 70 children were coming home, along with intelligence about alien technology that would change the course of human development forever. The Zealethan pursuit fleet launched within minutes of their escape, massive warships that had conquered star systems emerging from hidden bases throughout the fortress world's orbital space. These vessels carried firepower sufficient to sterilize entire planets, and their crews had never failed to recapture escaped prisoners from any species in galactic history. But they had never chased humans before, never faced opponents who treated impossible odds as merely another challenge to overcome. Master Sergeant Kim interfaced with the scout ship's quantum drive systems, pushing the alien technology beyond its normal operational limits to achieve speeds that should have torn the vessel apart. His neural implants burned with overload warnings as he forced human intuition to work in harmony with computer networks designed by minds that thought in mathematical concepts humans couldn't naturally process. But somehow, impossibly, the ship responded to his commands and leaped through folded space toward safety. The children handled the transition to faster-than-light travel with remarkable composure, supporting each other through the disorienting effects of quantum displacement, while maintaining the quiet discipline that had kept them alive during captivity. Morrison watched 8-year-old Sarah Martinez helping a younger boy deal with motion sickness, using techniques she had learned from observing the alien medical staff during their imprisonment. Dr. Walsh monitored the quantum communication link with Earth, receiving updates on the massive response that was mobilizing to welcome the returning heroes. Military hospitals were preparing to treat any medical or psychological trauma the children might have suffered, while intelligence teams stood ready to debrief every detail of their captivity that might prove useful for defending against future alien incursions. But the most important message came from the parents waiting at the staging base. Families who had spent weeks in agony, not knowing if their children were alive or dead, were finally receiving confirmation that the impossible rescue had succeeded. Morrison could hear the joy and relief in Dr. Vasquez's voice as she transmitted greetings from mothers and fathers who had never given up hope that their children would come home. The pursuit fleet fell further behind as the human ship approached the edge of Zealethan space. But Morrison knew that this escape was only the beginning of humanity's conflict with the Galactic Empire. The aliens would not accept the loss of their prisoners without retaliation, and Earth would need to prepare for challenges that made this rescue mission seem simple by comparison. Tommy Chen had been studying the captured Zealethan data files during their flight, using his tablet computer to translate alien military documents with the help of the ship's translation systems. The intelligence he was uncovering painted a disturbing picture of an empire built on systematic conquest and slavery, but it also revealed critical weaknesses that human strategists could exploit in future confrontations. The Stargate at Proxima Centauri activated just as the last pursuit ships disappeared from their sensors, opening a shimmering portal that led directly back to Earth. Morrison felt overwhelming emotion as he guided 73 human lives through that gateway, knowing that they were about to complete a journey that had carried them further from home than any human had ever traveled before. The arrival ceremony at Area 51 was unlike anything in military history. Parents rushed forward to embrace children they had feared were lost forever, while media representatives documented the moment when humanity proved that no distance was too far to travel in defense of their young. The children were heroes now, survivors who had maintained their humanity despite weeks of conditioning designed to turn them into alien soldiers. But perhaps the most profound moment came when Tommy Chen saluted Colonel Morrison with perfect military precision, then quietly asked if there were other children still being held on other worlds throughout the galaxy. The 8-year-old had seen the alien data files, understood that Earth's rescue was just one small victory in a conflict that spanned countless star systems. Morrison knelt down to meet the boys' eyes and made a promise that would echo through the halls of the Pentagon for generations to come. America would not rest while any children remained in alien hands, regardless of which species they belonged to or how far from Earth they were being held. The rescue of 70 human children had been just the beginning of humanity's crusade to protect the innocent throughout the galaxy. The Zelithan Empire had made a critical error when they decided to target Earth's children. They had awakened something in the human spirit that could not be defeated by superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They had learned what it meant to face an enemy that would cross the universe itself to protect their young, and that lesson would reshape the balance of power among the stars for centuries to come. As the families celebrated their reunion and military planners began preparing for the larger war that was surely coming, one thing had become absolutely clear. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage not with conquest or aggression, but with an act of rescue that demonstrated the values that would guide them as they took their place among the stars. The universe would never be the same again,